Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant. Another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Thank you so much for dropping by and listening again. Today's topic is about stupid things that wildlife control operators do. Yeah, stupid things that wildlife control operators do to ultimately hurt their business and hurt their relationships. So I wanted to highlight a few of these things. Had some experience in this particular area. As you know, I've been out of the field work for a fairly long time, been working in academia and then of course for my government job, but I still maintain relationships within the wildlife control industry. And what I've found is being as an outsider who's sort of associated with the industry, I'm not gunning for work. I don't have some of the stresses that you guys are going to have gunning for work, but I wanted to try to give you, sometimes when you step out of the box, you can see behaviors that damage people's businesses. And it strikes me as just bizarre as to why this happened. And it really underscores for me that sometimes people who are great wildlife control operators in terms of their ability to capture animals doesn't mean they know how to run a business. And sometimes the best people that know how to do wildlife are horrific business people. Why? Because they just hate people. But I'm digressing here a little bit. So I wanted to highlight our sponsor for today. Again, we have a sponsor for the Living the Wildlife podcast, and I wanted to definitely give a shout out to him. Let me get my information. His name is Adam. Oh, where do I go here? Here we get it out. I had it written down. Sorry, not Adam. Aaron Bray. Sorry, it slipped my mind. It's too many things going on. Aaron Bray of Servant Labs. I have a blog. I have a WordPress site. Had some issues. I've hired him a couple of times now, and Aaron Bray has come through to take care of cleaning things up without breaking the bank, which is always helpful. Sometimes when you pay a little more per hour, you actually get someone who works fast. So sometimes going with the cheap hourly rate means you're paying a lot more because the person's basically having you pay them for them to learn. Well, I've been pleased with some of the work he's done for me and my website, wildlifecontrolconsultant.com. So contact Aaron Bray, servantlabs.com. Let me repeat, servantlabs.com. And he will be able to hook you up with your website. Talk to him today. Again, servantlabs.com. Aaron Bray should be able to help you out with your website, certainly with your WordPress site, which is what I have. Give him a ring, reach out to him, tell him that Living the Wildlife podcast with Stephen Vantassel sent him. We would love to have more sponsors for our show with the Pest Geek podcast family. If you have a product or service that you want to advertise to the wildlife control and pest control community, we do hope that you will give us a ring. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. All right, well, let's get right into it in terms of the topic today. Things that wildlife control operators do to hurt their business. So what's number one? Well, they're not in any necessarily hierarchical order. I was just sort of doing some brainstorming and came up with a short list. This isn't comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sure you can probably think of others, but I hope that you would commit yourself not to commit these mistakes, because these are really unforced errors, folks. Don't do it. Do your best to avoid these particular areas. Number one, this one really gets my goat. I don't know why it happens. It totally blows my mind. Carry a business card with you. All right? If you're in one of the challenges with self-employment is you're always on the job. Even when you're not on the job, you're on the job, because you don't know where that next customer is going to come from. And I've asked wildlife control operators, sometimes PCOs, but not to the same extent, but wildlife control operators, hey, do you have a card? Oh, no, I left it in the truck. I don't have it. I ran out. I just handed out my last one. And they probably had two in their wallet. Don't do this, folks. You know, they're really not that heavy. Be prepared for those moments where you need to market yourself. Have a way to make sure that you're constantly carrying business cards with you. I get a lot of criticism and people make fun of me for the size of my wallet. There it is, okay? It's the Costanza wallet, those of you that remember Seinfeld, okay? I have a Costanza wallet. Look at how thick that is, all right? That's pretty thick. Let me put it right up there to the screen for you. It's probably an inch and a half. People say, you sit on that? No, I don't sit on it. It's in my front pocket. Now, this is a little over the top, but if you look carefully, I have business cards, okay? I've got business cards in here. I got business cards. So, and they're mine. Okay, they're cards that I have. I have to carry more than one type of card because I have a government job and of course I have my business, self-employed, my own personal business, right? So I have to carry more than one type of card. Carry your cards. I don't know how to explain that anymore. Carry your cards. So always be prepared to do that. Why does this matter? Because I was talking with a wildlife control operator. He's not a pro in the sense he's doing this full time. But he was telling me how he's charging $150 a skunk. And I said, would love to have a card. I mean, because I do referral. I refer people to wildlife control operators. I'd be happy to refer people to him. Oh, he didn't have one, the card. He told me he already gave me several. But this was a different context, and he probably did. I'm not denying he might have given me several cards in the past. But he took the opportunity, he lost the opportunity to follow up. I handed him my card. It looked to him as if he didn't even care. So what does that tell me about his professionalism? What does that tell me about? Is this someone I really want to refer people to visit? People do strange things. I don't know why they would look an opportunity in the mouth. Let me give you even another illustration of how silly people are. So, number one, carry business cards, okay? Number two, accept free advertising. You may say, well, that's a no-brainer, Stephen. Why wouldn't I accept free advertising? Well, you know, I'll be quite blunt with you. I have had this encounter numerous times. This is not just a one-off deal here. I'm talking about numerous situations. I was the editor of a newsletter. I edited for a particular association, and I would talk to different businesses, and I said, hey, you know, you have a new product coming out, service, send me a little bit of information. I'll put an ad in the newsletter for you. No charge. No charge. We'd simply be interested in getting your information out to our constituents. You would be shocked how many never sent me information. I'm a kind of a sarcastic guy, if you haven't figured that out, because I'm always intrigued at the stupid things people do. I mean, I'll just call it what it is. It's absolutely stupid. Okay? I'm not talking about an issue of people not having information and not knowing something. I'm not talking about ignorance here. I'm talking about fundamental stupid behavior. Okay? The heaviest thing when I was, it's changing now, thank God, but years ago, I would argue that the heaviest object in the world was the send key. And they say, why would I say that? Because I would ask people, send me, your advertising information, send me literature about your product. This is primarily for people trying to sell products, and they would never send it. Now, think about that for a minute. You're selling a product. You are trying to find a market for your product. Someone is asking you to send literature about your product, and you don't send it. Now, why would they do that? Especially when they knew that their product would be spotlighted in a newsletter that would go to individuals that could possibly buy that product at no charge. The only cost to that individual was simply to send the material for the ad. How is that complicated? They didn't even have to do a layout. We would do the layout. I just needed some text and preferably a photo. Wouldn't send it. So I've argued that the heaviest object in the world, and let me kind of show you what it is. It's going to be upside down, but it's the return key. Okay, where is it? Right over here. The send key. Here it's called the enter key. That's the heaviest object in the. So as I said, the heaviest object in the world is the send key. Don't let that be you. When people are asking you for information about your company, make sure you have something that you can send them. It doesn't have to be the great American novel. But if you don't have something like that, create it. There's a ton of software programs out there you can do. You can even use WordPad if you have Microsoft Office. You should be able to do that. Apple, of course, has their materials. I mean, this is not that. Go to the library and create something. Okay, it should not be that difficult for you simply to do this. Carry a business card. Be willing to hand it out, of course. Make sure you have literature for your company, particularly those of you that are trying to sell products. It just boggles my mind. A subset of that is you need to have the ability to send photos of your product. If you don't know how to take photos, have someone take photos. I take photos. If you're looking for someone to take photos of your products, send me a product. I will take photos of your product and send it back to you. Okay? We'll do it as an exchange. It's really not that complicated, right? But getting good photos takes a little bit of skill. It's not rocket science. I'm not suggesting that at all. But you want to be able to market your product appropriately, not just sending people a postage stamp image either, where it's 54K. Okay, you want to have something that's well over 1,000K, so at least a megabyte, or preferably 2 to 3 megabytes, right? So you can have something that's going to be 3 by 4 inches in bit size at a 300 dpi pixel rate, and so. Again, that may be rocket science. It may feel like that's unusual for you. Again, we can help you, right? We can find someone local. Maybe your children know all about this, all right? But the point is that get that material about your product and have it in a location where you can actually send it to people. So that's the second problem that people have. That wildlife control operators, the stupid things that they do. Number 3, how do you treat government workers? Now I know for a lot of people in the wildlife control industry, and maybe in the pest control industry, I'm not as familiar with them, of course, but they have a tendency to think that they love to hate government workers. Whether it's wildlife services, whether it's the state agency that they have to get licensed through, whether it's their licensing for their vehicles, whatever the case may be, government workers, they hate them. But let me kind of clue you in on some things here. Government workers can make your life miserable. Don't encourage them to do that. Now, I'm not agreeing with that. I think that government workers have to have an emotional stability where they're doing the right thing, even when people are not treating them properly. However, it's naive to think that everyone tries to behave in a Christian manner. Okay, and then there's plenty of people who think they're Christians and they're not. Okay, you could not convict that person of being a Christian in a court of law if you tried. There's just not enough evidence. Okay. People are human. I've heard a story of a gentleman who was trying to get a product registered in the state. And the only reason why that product was not registered in that state was because he was so abrasive that he basically, pardon my language, he pissed off a bunch of government people and they would not register that product. Now, I don't think that's right. That's wrong to do. But I understand it. What does this mean? Does this mean you can't disagree with a government worker? No. Does this mean that you can't raise your voice with a government worker? No. It means you have to watch, how are you behaving? Is this person who is giving you a hard time, or in your perception giving you a hard time, is this person simply following the law, or is this person being a jerk? And you know what? Before you get to the jerk, you have one other issue, and that is sometimes never assume conspiracy when incompetence suffices. The fact of the matter is not every government worker knows what they're doing. And a lot of government workers are lazy. I'll admit it. Yeah, it's a problem. Okay, they're not all, we have a bell curve, right? Not everyone is out here in the other end shooting the lights out. There's a lot of people who just sort of go along to get along, to do the least amount of work necessary. That sometimes happens. I'll be frank with you. Sometimes you should be very grateful that government workers don't want to work more. Okay? Because if they do, sometimes they'll do things that you've been skirting the law about that you're glad that they're not paying attention to you. Okay? So it kind of cuts both ways at times. My point being is that I had an incident where I was talking with a wildlife control operator. And I was trying to get some information because I like to relate information out to other people. I try to help market businesses. I believe that's just part of my job. I'm not speaking here on behalf of my government position. I'm simply telling you my experience as a government worker. I've also worked in academia, which is similar, but not identical, but similar. I don't have a regulatory role in my job. I'm strictly an educator. But I have influence, right? And I do get phone calls, and I do refer people to wildlife control operators. When a government worker wants your information, give it to them. If you're running a business and this person can help you market your company, why not give it? I have to refer. I have people that call and they want someone to do wildlife control. I can't do that wildlife control, right? Because that's a conflict of interest. I can't be in the business of competing with local businesses. So if I don't have anyone to send that individual, that potential customer to, then there's that the customer's not helped and you're not helped. It doesn't make any sense. So don't be a jerk to your government workers. And I'm even going to go a step further, and that is try to make contact with your government workers. If you can develop relationships so that you're helping them do their job, they can help you do your job. And so it can be a mutually beneficial. It doesn't have to be hostile. Okay? So let me give an illustration. When you give your enforcement officer, I'm going to say your game warden, many of you are going to be working in states with game wardens. When you're working in a state with a game warden, it doesn't hurt, to give your game warden a call every now and again, send them a Christmas card, send them a Thanksgiving card, whatever the case may be, letting them know you're around, keeping that person in your memory, invite them to go on a job with you. They may never go, but the fact that you were open with them means a lot, because you're like, that guy's professional. And I'm not trying to exclude you ladies, we're primarily a male-dominated force, right? So when they know you in a good way, that can be helpful for you. Because they may remember your name. They may not be trying to exclude any other wildlife control operators, because that would probably be legal in their state, right? But the point is sometimes a person will ask, well, who would you use if you had a choice? We know you can't recommend, but who would you use if you could? And that's kind of how people try to play this game to get around it, right? You want to be sure that your name, that game warden that enforcement officer, for those of you that are PCOs, there's enforcement for pest control as well. You want them to know that you are a straight arrow guy doing things right, and that you're treating your customers like a true professional. Like you are a paradigm for what a good PCO would be. You're a good paradigm for what a good wildlife control operator should be. And that pays dividends. It takes time to build that type of reputation. But you do that by calling up occasionally. I'm not, don't be a pest to yourself. Not every week. Don't do it every day. Once a month, maybe once every couple of months. Just say, hey, I had this really strange job. You may want to come out and check it out. It can be very helpful because sometimes your game wardens don't know what you do. They really don't. They're so used to going after hunters and fishermen that they really don't know a whole lot about the wildlife control field. And they might just come along, and it would be an opportunity for you, because you probably know the law better than they do when it comes to wildlife control. That's not going to be true in every case, of course, but it may be more true than you think. And then you become the go-to person for them. So that way, if there's a complaint, and if you're in business long enough, you're probably going to get a complaint because you don't have to do anything wrong to get someone to complain about you, right? You may have heard me talk elsewhere about the issue between malpractice and malaccurrence, right? That's a topic for another time. But malpractice is when you've done something wrong and you had a bad result. Malaccurrence is you didn't do anything wrong, you just had a bad result. How many times have you, maybe set a trap somewhere, did everything by the book, and the raccoon still blew out another vent? Well, what did you do wrong? Well, you didn't do anything wrong. The raccoon responded to that trap in a very violent way and damaged the house more. That's malaccurrence. That's not malpractice, right? So, but a lot of people don't understand that. And when your game warden gets a complaint, he's going to be like, oh, that doesn't sound like so-and-so. Think of a good friend that you have, and so say someone came up to you and said, well, I believe this person's a mass murderer. You're going to be like, I'm over their house a lot. Boy, if they're a mass murderer, they sure hide it pretty well, right? So it's just, there's certain things that you learn that are just not likely, just beyond the pale. Not impossible, but just really the skepticism comes up. I'll give an illustration for myself, for instance. In my job here, I was doing some of my paperwork type activities that requires me to reach out to different people. Well, I got someone that I had contact with. I got them mad at me, and they called up my boss and complained, and they, believe it or not, accused me of being being an animal rights activist. Now, that is kind of funny. Stephen Vantassel, the animal rights activist, writing a book like this, right? So, no. And my boss actually laughed on the phone, from what she told me. Relationships matter. I know it's work. I know you're busy. But you're not too busy to build valuable relationships where you become someone who is thought about in a positive manner. And that can be a very helpful relationship because something will go wrong eventually. You want to have people willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. And if you have good education of your game wardens or your enforcement people, when they understand the complexities that you are confronted with on a regular basis, and you will find that sometimes the law doesn't fit, and that's a matter of interpretation. Sometimes someone says you broke the law when in fact it's a matter of interpretation. Sometimes the law is contradictory. There was a situation that happened in Massachusetts where a farmer was jacking deer at night, which was illegal in Massachusetts, shooting the deer with a rifle, which was illegal in Massachusetts. He had to use a shotgun. And he was spotlighting the deer, and he was shooting the deer out of season. So a whole host of violations. Well, he got pinched by enforcement, went to court. The judge said, the farmer, were you killing these deer? And the guy said, yup, sure was, Your Honor. They were depredating on my apple orchard. And the law says if an animal is depredating on my food, I have the right to kill it. And sure enough, it was like an 1880 law or something in Massachusetts, long-standing law, right? And that law contradicted state regulations governing hunting. And the judge looked at it, looked at the statute, and said, yep, you're right, case dismissed. So sometimes you could be accused of breaking the law when in fact you did break a law. But the problem is that which law? Because the laws contradicted. Yes, it does happen. Not common, but it can happen. So build those relationships. Send a card, make a phone call. Sometimes just a few minute phone call, your game will go a long way. And just sort of say, hey, I'm out here working. Just figured I'd let you know, especially if you're dealing with high risk, high visibility jobs where you might be getting into trouble. Those relationships can matter. Okay? All right. So, number 4. The fourth mistake that wildlife control operators make is they take without giving. Certainly those of you who are young in the industry, obviously you're going to be taking more than you're giving because you don't have a lot to give. I mean, I get that, right? So I don't want to make you guys that are new feel bad, okay? So yeah, you need to take, you need to understand, you need to be bringing in because you got to try to build your business and get going. But what it does mean is that there's different ways you can give. It doesn't always have to be money. But respect goes a long way. Gratitude goes a long way. I mean, it's very gratifying to me when I have people drop me an email and they're saying, "Hey, Steve, appreciate the podcast. Keep it up." I didn't earn any money on that. I didn't make any money on that. But it meant something. That person took some time out of their day and said, "Hey, Steve, thanks. I appreciate it." Because in this type of a medium, we don't get feedback. It's not like I'm speaking before an audience where you can see the body language, like, they hate my guts, or, hey, they're having a good time. In this type of a medium, we have no feedback unless someone actively sends it out there and gives it, which would be an email, phone call, or they meet me in person sometimes.
Albert Vantassel.
And a lot of people from in America aren't traveling to Montana, okay? So they're not seeing me too often. Make sure that you do some of those things. It also means that when someone is giving you a lot, that you take the opportunity to, maybe buy some of their stuff if they're selling something. This has been something that a lot of people don't understand, and that is when you had early in our industry where we had certain businesses that were really doing a lot, they were leaders within this particular industry. One of the ways you contributed back and thanked them for their contributions and the amount of information they were giving away was staggering, is you would buy some bait. Maybe you'd buy their book. Maybe you'd have them come and speak. There are little things you can do. Sometimes it's not a lot. You buy a $5 bait. But as a way, rather than buying one that was $4.25, you paid the $5 and bought the $5 bait. Why? Because this business contributed to the industry. The other business did not contribute to the industry. I make it a habit, just truth in advertising, I make it a habit of contributing more to people who are members of NUCOA than those who are not members of NUCOA. So why is that? Well, because people that are members of NUCOA are contributing to the industry. They're part of the brotherhood. Okay, we're not a union, we're a trade organization, but a trade organization is endeavoring to try to make things better for the wildlife control industry. So why would I want to give more to people that aren't participating in that? Because there's strength in numbers. Why would I want to be doing that when there are people within my industry who I could be helping, and within my group that would be helping. So it doesn't make any sense to me, right? So you take care of family first before you go out and take care of people that are non-family. So I take care of people who are non-family, but I do more for people that are family than I would for non-family members. So we could talk the ethics about that if you wish. So that would be kind of fun to talk about. For those of you who think that's anti-Christian, be happy to have that conversation with you. So learn how to give back. Sometimes it can be as simple as, what are some other ways to give back? Photos, volunteer, talk up something, help spread the word about this person. Whether it be, let's say if you've had a good relationship with, I'll call it XYZ Trap Company, well then talk up that trap company. If you've had a good service, sometimes just giving them a 5-star review, that's a way of giving back rather than just simply sitting there like a bump on a log and always trying to just take. How many of you have reached out to Franklin and told him how much you appreciated him running the Pest Geek podcast series? Okay. Have you given him a 5-star rating on his podcast, right? I'm just one contributor within this, right? I'm just a one-man show. I do one podcast or vodcast now a week. That's it. So I have nowhere near the investment that he has. I don't know how he does it. Okay. But so I hope you get the idea. Sometimes little things mean a lot to help encourage people to continue the type of giving that they are. So don't just be a taker, be a giver as well. All right, number 5. Refuse the fifth mistake that wildlife control operators do, the 5th stupid thing that they do is they refuse to be trainable. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, clearly that's not you, right? So I'm talking to the choir here. I'm not talking to the enemies, but you know who I'm talking about. And maybe that was something where you were in the past, where you were not able to, you have a fixed system, and God forbid someone else tells you it's different. Certainly there's going to be things in wildlife control that are going to be right and certain things that are going to be wrong. But between those two poles, there's a lot of gray area where people have different ways. I'll give you an illustration, right? Do you always set the trap, a foothold for those of you in the fur trapping field? Do you always set the trap to catch the coyote by the right foot or by the left foot, right? Does it really matter? Really? Does it really matter? Does it really matter that the trap for your squirrel is 1 inch this direction versus 1 inch that direction? Does it really matter? You get where I'm going. Obviously, most of us aren't quite that specific, right? But that certain people have it in their head. They get kind of tunnel vision that there's only one way to do something. And God forbid anyone come along and tell them that there's a different way to do it. Don't be that person. I'm not telling you to just simply swallow everything you hear. What I'm saying is be open to hear it out and then make a judgment. Experiment a little bit. I hope all of you during your work take a little bit of time to experiment, to try something new. Don't do it on every job. Just if you try to think about it, maybe half an hour a week. And some weeks you'll be able to do more than others because obviously in crunch time you're trying to make a lot of money to get for the slow time. When we're in the slow time, it may be a good idea to try to say, maybe I'll do some bait experiments. Things are slow. I have a lot of time in my hands. Maybe I'm only working 4 hours a day. Maybe that's the time I can spend a little extra time at this house, and I'll bait this trap with XYZ bait, and this trap over here with ABC bait, and this trap over here with MNO bait, right? So we're going to find out which trap works the best. I'm going to do that for all the jobs for the next 2 weeks. See what works. I hope that all of you are kind of doing that, because if you're not doing something different, you're not going to learn what's going to be more efficient, because we have to find new ways of doing things faster in this business because we're so stressed when it comes to time. So I hope you're trying to do a little bit of learning. So you're learning on your own, but are you going to be learning from other people? Now, obviously, as I said before, you guys are already learning, right? If you're not if you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously not closed-minded. You want to learn new ideas and learn new perspectives, okay? But if you have an opportunity to talk to colleagues who aren't going to training events, I had a guy I was talking to, and I was trying to talk up going to a wildlife control operator training event, and he looked right at me and he said, well, what am I going to learn there? I'm not going to learn anything new. I stood there in absolute stunned. I didn't even bother arguing with him. I was so shocked I didn't even bother arguing with him. I'm just like, wow. Because, and I thought to myself, well, obviously, if you're God, you're not going to learn anything new, right? Because you already know everything. You know everything there is to know. This person actually thought, he was the arrogance of this. Now, other people are more creative about their arrogance. They will come up with all kinds of excuses as to why they can't make a training event. Oh, it's the wrong time of the year. I used to claim when I was involved in running some training events, I always argued, no matter what, the training event is always at the wrong date, at the wrong time, at the wrong location. So I said, that's just a given. And I've argued that there are lots of people out there that I could put the training event on next door to their house during their vacation and do it for free, and they still couldn't make it because it was too far in the wrong time. Now, obviously, that's very sarcastic, but you know exactly what I'm referring to. Here's the reason why some people don't go to training, is they can't afford it and they just don't want you to know it. But other times, people don't want to go because their ego will not allow them to sit down and listen to what someone else has to say. They hated school, and they certainly haven't learned to love education later on. Even education is going to help them make money or save money. It's amazing. I've been to events where a wildlife control operator came out of the training event and said, oh my God, because of what I learned in one class today, I made a job that was $1,500. I sold a job for $1,500. He wouldn't have been able to sell the job unless he took that class. One class. So don't be that person. Continue to always ask yourself, what can I learn? How can I improve myself? How can I expand my reading and understanding and learning about my field so I can continue to be professional? Because if you're not growing, you're dying. It's just that simple. All right, number 6. The sixth stupid thing that wildlife control operators do to harm their business, and that is treating every other wildlife control operator as a competitor. This is really a problem sometimes within the fur trapping industry, and that is they tend to treat, at least maybe I should put this a little bit differently. I've had the experience that trappers have often treated me as a competitor, even when I didn't want to compete with them. Some people in the wildlife control industry do this as well. It's one thing to compete with someone in the business area. It's another thing to hate them. You don't have to hate your competitor. In fact, it's been gratifying to see a lot of wildlife control operators who have learned to have a friendly competition with their competitors in the area. Friendly meaning that they will actually join together and form a mutual aid agreement, that when they get a big job, they will actually work together to do the job. They'll compete for those squirrel jobs and they'll, undercut each other and fight, whatever the case may be. But when it comes to those bigger jobs, they put their business competition aside and work together because they can make money together that they couldn't make on their own. But if you hate your competitor, how are you going to work with them? Some people have such a good relationship that when they go on vacation, they send the calls to their competitor. When their competitor goes on vacation, their competitor sends the work to them. There have been situations where wildlife control operators have gotten sick, where they've gotten injured, perhaps with a fall or car or vehicle accident, and the competition would help close out their jobs and do it at no cost. That's amazing. And that is something, that's a brotherhood, to use a masculine term, or a sisterhood, that we really want to have. We don't want our competition with each other to become so personal and visceral and angry. It's just not worth it. Because labor is such a premium in our industry, you want to learn how to treat your competitor, not as a competitor, but as a colleague that you're growing with, and you are competing for particular jobs, but you're not angry with them. You're not fighting them at an emotional level. There's a phrase that's sometimes used. It's like, it's not personal, it's business. It's not personal. Don't make it personal. It's business. Be businesslike, but don't be so businesslike that you forget the opportunity you may have to do that big bird job with your colleague. Now, if you don't respect your colleague because you think they're incompetent, well, obviously that's going to be a problem. But you know that sometimes your anger with a competitor has nothing to do with their incompetence, or their competency, I should say. You actually think they're good. You just don't like them because maybe they're better than you are, or maybe they're a better salesperson than you are. That's not something, that's not something to be angry about. It's something that should force you to improve yourself and to grow. But don't allow that competition to withhold the opportunity for you to make money, where you can see them as a colleague working together for those bigger jobs. Because maybe I suspect a lot of control operators are losing money. They're leaving money on the table because they're not bidding those big jobs because they don't have the manpower to do it. Make friends. This is why I'm so emphatic sometimes about associations, where we need associations, because you need to build those networks, those developing colleagues where you can work together for those larger jobs. And in situations where sometimes something bad happens and you need help to take care of clients so that you can keep your business afloat. There have even been situations where people have helped keep other businesses afloat while a wildlife control operator was recovering from a serious illness or injury. That's remarkable, right? We want to encourage that to the extent that's possible. Now, if you have someone that you don't trust, that you believe is illegal, where they're not following proper ethics, that's going to be a tough one. You probably don't want to build a business relationship with that person, because the fallout from their mistakes will tarnish you as well. But you know that when your competitors are quality organizations, you know who your competitors are that you should respect, even if you don't respect them. Okay, the ones worthy of respect, and you just may have some sort of personal issue with it, the old pissing contest, right? You don't want to make this personal. But for those businesses that you know where the guy isn't ethical, maybe he doesn't have liability insurance, maybe he's not paying his taxes, maybe he's not licensed, maybe he's working under the radar, maybe it's just someone you don't think is really qualified, maybe he's working out of his Honda. Okay, a little two-door car. Well, is that really going to be a wildlife control operator you want to be associated with? You get what I'm saying here. Avoid those types of mistakes. So let's do the rundown again. I have six of them. Stupid things that wildlife control operators do. The first one is not carrying a card. Carry your business cards. Number two is accept advertising. Accept free advertising. Don't fight it. Number three is treat government officials with contempt. That's the third mistake. Don't do that. Make sure that you treat your government officials properly and try to build relationships with them, because it can help you in the long run in ways that you may not be able to see in the short term. Number four, take without giving. Don't do that. Be a giver. Even little things can matter a lot in the long run. Number five, refuse to be trainable. Of course, that can't be any of you, because if you're listening to the podcast, that's obviously not you, but you know who I'm referring to. Make sure you're always continuing to learn, because there's always something new we can get. And then finally, number 6, treating your competitors as enemies. Don't do that. Always try to think about competitors as, can I build a relationship with this competitor so it's a friendly competition rather than a competition of animosity and hatred. And you'll find in the long run this can certainly be helped. There's plenty more ways, stupid things that wildlife control operators do to hurt their business, but I hope that gives you something to think about, gives you something to chew on. Are you making any of those particular mistakes? I hope not. And if you are, now is the time to turn it around, and you'll bear the benefits down the road. Want to close this out again with another announcement of our sponsor, servantlabs.com, servantlabs.com. Give a ring out to Aaron Bray if you have a situation with your website, you want to have some consultation, maybe some design issues, especially if you're working with WordPress sites like I have with my site. Reach out to Aaron Bray at servantlabs.com, servantlabs.com. And then lastly, I want to thank you again for listening to our vodcast here. Have an idea for a topic you want to cover? Definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. And then visit my website, wildlifecontrolconsultant.com. We'd love to have you visit. I have a blog that I put out on pretty much a weekly basis. Different things that are coming out, and subscribe. It's all doesn't cost you a thing. And then if you have a product that you would like to have spotlighted here on our vodcast, definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, and we'd love to have sponsors to help us continue this type of work that we're doing. Love your feedback. Hey, be safe out there, and make sure you watch out for yourself and take time, spend it with your family, and always think about, what goal are you trying to achieve? Are you living to work, or are you working to live? Stephen Vantassel, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.